Hello and welcome to another episode of Interview with the Schizophrenic. Today I have the pleasure of having Samuel with me. He's from the state of Pennsylvania in America. Hello Samuel, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Hello, Duncan. I'm doing all right. Just trying to get by here.
Yeah, how's the COVID affected you?
Well, I live in a very rural area. I don't know. Have you ever heard of the Amish?
Yes, I have,
They're
yes.
the Yeah. So I live in an area actually where there's a lot of Amish, and very very rural, and so we haven't been hit too hard by COVID. Maybe as like a percentage of the population, but it's been mostly concentrated in like people that work in like agriculture. And
Yeah.
due to the low population density, I mean it hasn't been too worrisome, thankfully. In the cities, it's been quite a bit worse. So
Oh yeah, definitely. I think oh yeah, definitely. In the rural areas it's a little bit safer. Um, obviously because the population density is smaller. Okay, fine. So let's start. What I usually do is ask you how your mental health journey began. So what happened before you got diagnosed, how you got diagnosed, what was going on around that time. So give me, can you tell me how it all began for you, your journey with psychosis and schizophrenia?
I'll go back pretty far here. When I was a child, I had always had some issues with being different. They were confused because I was gifted academically in certain areas, and then at a deficit in other areas. And I always dealt with a high amount of paranoia. So, for example, I remember when I was a kid, I thought I heard voices outside of my aunt's house. We were having a spend over there. So I was probably like 8 or 9 years old. I would pick up one of my siblings, and I would go and I would place them in the doorway, and then I would pick up another one and then place them a few feet away. So the thought being that if someone was coming in to try to hurt me, they would have to step on all these children in order to get to me. And
Right.
I had always kind of dealt with certain things like that, and always extra vigilant. And finally, I had here in the states we don't have anything like maybe I don't know if you're in the UK, but the NHS or universal care, we
Yeah.
have none of that. So I had no health insurance. I wasn't able to see a doctor until we moved from Texas, which Texas is a very conservative state, and your options for healthcare are very limited if you don't have a certain income. So moved to Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania has a much more generous healthcare system, and my mom's job covered us for insurance, so I was able to go see a psychologist. And there really is, I would say, I don't know, a apprehension when it comes to diagnosing, children, as having schizophrenia or anything like that.
Yeah.
So they initially diagnosed me with Asperger's, autism spectrum
Hmm.
disorder. And some of that never quite made sense to me because I always dealt with the incredible paranoia and anxiety, and um, I there's actually been a few times in hindsight that I look back and I'm like, oh, I was probably in psychosis. So I managed to get through high school. I went to university in Hawaii for about a year, and then I became convinced that the U.S. government was going to have to default on its debt. So I had
Yeah.
saved up some money, and I flew to Kyrgyzstan in Central Asia, and I lived there for a couple months, and then I kind of bounced back and forth between there, and I ended up spending in total about 2 years over there. And I was working
Wow.
as I say I was working, but I mean it was a border, it was a pseudo work because it was kind of like a volunteer, but it was kind of like work position over there as an English teacher. And I also had, and I want to I'll also make it abundantly clear. I don't come from a family with like a ton of money. When I was a child, we were lower
Mm.
middle class, and now my family's middle class. But um, I did manage to go to Brazil during that time too in my travels. Managed to go to a few places, and I really enjoyed the culture and my experiences in Kyrgyzstan. In fact, I believe returning from Kyrgyzstan to the United States is one of the biggest mistakes I ever made in my life.
Oh,
I would say that,
really?
yeah, that was one of the biggest. I have a theory that people with, on the schizophrenic spectrum do better in countries that are more community oriented and more
Yeah.
traditional than
Hmm.
modern Western countries where they just want to jam you packed full of pills.
Yeah.
I remember reading, and I don't know, if this is wrong, and I'll try not to get too sidetracked here, but I remember reading, for example, they found no significant difference in countries like India and other developing countries between the general population and schizophrenics. But in the U.S. and the U.K., there's about a 20-year difference in life expectancy between individuals with my diagnosis and the general
You,
population.
you, you know what I heard about this is that I don't know if you hear voices, but what I've heard is the type of voices that you hear are localized to your local environment. So, like exactly what you're saying. So in the UK and America, they're more hostile because in our countries it's very competitive. Life is very competitive. It's highly capitalist. Whereas in countries like you say, where there's more community, um, it's kind of people support each other. So it's not like in India, the voices are much more calm and soothing. It's kind I've heard that before. So it's kind of localized to where you live. So that's interesting that you said that as well.
Yeah, I've heard that, but I also think, and I do deal with that issue on occasion. But I will say I think it really too is the reactions to the people around you, right? So, for example, maybe somewhere like India or other places in Asia, it might be considered like a spiritual gift,
Mm,
whereas in our countries, it's immediately like, okay, no, we're taking it. I mean, really, that kind of shows the type of thinking that, like, oh, we're gonna make you better by taking you away from everybody and
mm,
isolating you. But so I have made this trip back and forth, and I eventually decided that I was going to return to the United States. And I had wanted to complete my education. I had wanted to get ahead, and I thought, okay, I'm going to return to the U.S., get my education, and then leave again. Well, I
mm,
returned to the U.S. and we ended up moving to a more rural area, and I was just I was isolated, a lot more. Wasn't able
mm,
to interact with people, and I don't currently have the ability to drive. So, in the US, you have to drive all over the place unless you're somewhere like New York City. It's a very wide country, and the public transit is abysmal. It's really,
mm,
in most cases outside of the city, public transit is just non existent.
mm.
And, I just, I started spiraling, and really, I mean, that there's a period of about 2 years in there from the end of 2016 to the beginning of 2018 that really just seemed like a blur to me. And
Okay.
in in 2017,
In the sense that
Mhm.
I was going to say, in the sense that when you look back now, the memory of those years is clouded. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, my memory of that time is clouded, and when I think of certain things that I thought in that time and my emotional state, it just none of it makes any sense to me. And
Okay.
so Uh, around May of 2017, I was going through a difficult time. I finally managed to finish my associate's degree after like 4 years of studying. I'm finishing, a 2-year community college degree, and that was just because I
Mm,
jumped around so much. And so I'm finally finishing up, but I was really going through a rough time, and I had a week. And looking back, I think it might have been a episode of psychosis. I was not able to sleep for about a week. I was just on constant. wired and not able to sleep and getting paranoid about things and that sort of thing. And so my
Were
my
you on medication at the time?
no, no, they were still saying, "Oh, you are autistic spectrum,"
Okay.
and so they were still saying that at that time. And living in a rural area, the quality of services you get are pretty abysmal.
Mm,
As far as like, well, for example, later I ended up trying to get a therapist in my local area. They had no availabilities for over a year. You couldn't get in to see
okay.
one for over a year. So I randomly, May 2017, I spontaneously decided to take a trip and go visit some friends in France that I had actually.
Mm,
There was a girl. She's still my friend. She lived in Kyrgyzstan, and then now she lives in France. And so I just spontaneously bought a ticket to France and I really did not have the money to be doing that. I barely had enough money to scrape by, and I buy this ticket to France. I go over to France, and the whole trip's just a blur to me. I see photos of it, and I really don't um, remember large portions of it. I,
you think you were dissociating?
I think so. Yeah, I think I would say so. And I don't know. It was just like I don't want to say like I heard a voice or anything, but it was just like I had this strong feeling like, oh, if I just leave, if I go to Europe, oh, this is what it's going to be like. And of course, it was nothing like I
Mm,
had thought in my head. So I come back from that trip, and I was even more dejected and in a worse place than when I went.
mm,
So things just kind of carried on like that from about May 2017, and then in November, beginning of November 2017, I had managed to get a little bit of money, and I decided to take a trip to Costa Rica. So I take this trip to Costa Rica, and I'm there. Okay, so the entire time I had lived in Kyrgyzstan, and I'd never thought about this. First off, I want to say Kyrgyzstan is actually a very safe country. Um,
yeah.
the murder rate is like lower or equivalent of like the United States. Um, if you are white or Asian, you can walk around at night and without any issues because
Mm,
they're gonna suspect that you're a local, and they don't mess with locals. Now, if they do think you're a foreigner, you might run into some trouble, but generally, a very like low rate of you know random violent crime. So
yeah.
you go to Costa Rica, which they always say, oh, it's such a safe country, such a safe country, but it's still in Latin America, the most dangerous region of the world as far as violent crime goes. And
Mm,
so I go there, and my plane gets in at like, I don't know, I'd say 1 or 2 in the morning, and I couldn't check in to my hotel until like noon, right? So I had about like 8 hours. So I'm not thinking like everybody just telling me, oh, Costa Rica's so safe, Costa Rica's so safe. I'm not thinking that like, oh, it's a bad decision maybe to walk around Costa Rica
yeah.
at like 3 in the morning in downtown San Jose, Costa Rica at 3 in the morning. That's not a thought that's occurring to me. I'm also thinking that like, hey, everything's gonna be open because this is to Costa Rica. This is a tourist country, right? So I'm gonna think there's places I could hang out. Well, as soon as I get there, man, everything is closed. Okay, and it
Yeah.
is looking sketchy, right? It's looking sketchy. Like before I went to Brazil, I was very mindful because, you always hear about like be very careful in Brazil. Brazil has a lot of violent crime. So I was very careful. I had all my stuff to a T, but with Costa Rica, I was a bit lax. So I'm walking, and I'm sitting down at this park bench, and I see these two teenagers. I would say they're like 17, 18, somewhere in there. I see them walk from across the street. They were with a group of people. I see them walk across the street, walk across crosswalk, walk into the park, and then they turn directly in front of me to like start walking towards me. And this is
Okay.
really what kind of started causing me to like, really go down. Because you have to remember, for most of the year, I had already been in like not a real clear mental state. And they turn and they start walking towards me, and I see one of them has a gun in his hand. And
Mm,
The one walks up to the left of me, and the one other one walks up to the right of me. Now, I'm not gonna go into like my whole background as far as stuff, but I come from a family that has a lot of military and like combat experience and training
Yeah.
and that sort of stuff. So this guy standing to the left of me, he has a gun, and this other guy standing on the right of me, he's unarmed. And I'm sitting on this park bench, and I have in my pockets, I have about $500 of cash. But not only that, I have a bunch of other stuff, man. I have like a Bible, a notebook, pencils, my phone. But my my pockets were almost as full as my backpack. And then in my
Yeah.
backpack, I had my laptop and a ton of clothes. So I'll get to why this is important then. But this kid walks over and he's like waving the gun in my face, and they're like trying to reach into my pockets. And I'm just like, no, no, because like, man, I would have been screwed. That five hundred
Yeah.
dollars was like paying for most of my trip. So I'm like, no, no, and I'm like, I'm batting the things away. And the guys they're starting to get more hostile, and he's like pointing the gun at me, but it's like not right in my face, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And I don't know what happened, but was just like I just completely went totally psychotic. Um, I just grabbed the top of the gun and pointed it away from me and started punching this kid in his face.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, he fell down to the ground. And then I turned around and he said something. At the time, I speak some Spanish now, but at the time I spoke no Spanish. And he fell to the ground and he starts yelling. And my phone and my backpack were still sitting on the park bench. And um, I turned around and the other guy starts running. And I don't even know. I didn't even think about it, man. I wanted to do harm, and I held up the gun, and I ended up thinking it was a real gun because I just started shooting. I just pulled up
Yeah.
the gun. I just started unloading in his direction, but I was so shaky, I don't think I hit anything. And
Yeah.
so I throw the gun on the ground, which wasn't really smart. I throw the gun on the ground. The kid that I had knocked down, he gets up, he runs over, he tries to grab my backpack and my phone, so I start chasing after him. Um, and he drops my backpack, but he ends up getting away with my phone. I get my backpack back, and I turn around, and I had thrown the gun on the ground, and some kid that was there was fighting with this kid over the gun. So I went and I jumped in, and we're all fighting and stuff. And I knew the gun was empty, so I wasn't too concerned. I just like kind of backed off, and I told the other guy to back off, and the kid just ran away with his gun. And I ended up finding another guy. We called the police. I went to the police, filed a police report. But man, that just really messed me up. That whole thing just it messed me up. And I went home and I started getting like delusions. But, I mean, I have always had delusions, but these were really severe. And waking up, not having good sleep, thinking everybody was kind of out to get me, and
Did you
just
think these
really,
people? You think these people were gonna get revenge, or was it just a general feeling of being in danger?
it was just a general feeling. And it was I actually see, this was in Costa Rica that this happened, and I
Mm.
actually was supposed to be there for 2 weeks. I cut my trip short,
Mm.
and I went back to the States. And so I started having panic attacks all the time too. It was a general feeling of unsafety, and then also too the feeling that people were trying to destroy my soul, were trying to invade my head. And in fact, I remember thinking after they had tried to rob me, I legitimately remember thinking that like these guys were demons. And I pulled out my Bible and I was like, like get away from me, you demons, and stuff after they had run away. And
Mm.
yeah, so I get back to the States and everything started spiraling, man, and I knew something was seriously, seriously wrong. That some of the thoughts I was having. So
Yeah.
I went to uh, my I went to my family doctor and I was like telling him like I didn't know how to articulate it, but I just said, listen, I'm not feeling like myself. And at the time, I wasn't calling it paranoia. I was just calling it anxiety. And I said, I'm having this ridiculous anxiety that all this stuff's gonna happen. And she's like, okay, so what antidepressant do you want? She's asking me, what
Yeah.
what medication do I want? Like I'm not a
Yeah. The
doctor.
psychiatrist does the same to me. That happens to me sometimes as well. They say, "So what do you want to do? What medic? Do you know what I mean? What doses do you want to be on?" It's yeah.
How does that
It
make you
happens to me.
feel? when they
kind
say
of,
that.
this I back then, this was like a few years ago. This would happen quite often. I would dictate how much medication I'll take, but now I think they've become a bit harder, and they they won't allow me. They tell me what to do. But I think it was back then I was a bit more crazy, and I was kind of angry all the time, and I just wanted to be in control.
Right.
Um, but now I'm kind of more accepting, I guess, and I just kind of okay, fine, I'll take the medication, whatever you say, what you want me to take, and this sort of thing.
Well, see, she didn't even refer me to like a psychiatrist or or anything. She just said, "Oh, what when do you want? You can take any of these." And I was like, "Well, I don't like what's the what's the difference? Like I literally
Yeah.
I don't know." And and again, they were just like antidepressants, or whatever. And so that happened, and then I went to my therapist, and I was like, "Listen, um, I think I might need to go to the hospital. I'm having these thoughts about violence, and um, I really think I should go to the hospital. In fact, I actually saw him the day that my incident happened, and I
Okay.
don't really want to go into too much detail, but what ended up happening was I was in a completely like disassociating and just really it's hard to exactly explain the state of mind because when I think back to it, I'm like, man, that's not me. But I was involved in a shooting and with
Okay.
a family member, and I was the shooter, and um, I got charged with they put my face on the front of the local paper, and they tried to say call say I was guilty of attempted homicide. Is what they were
Okay.
trying to charge me with. And overall, if all of the stuff I was facing, I was looking up to 60 years in prison. And they obviously I got arrested, and I was treated pretty horribly uh, in the legal justice system, at least as far as like actually in jail. Like what they do over here in jail is that they say you're suicidal. They um, take off all your clothes and they give you this like tribal like vest thing, and
Yeah.
you can't you can't tear it or whatever, but you're completely naked beside this thing. It's really dehumanizing. And they
Mm.
talk about the guards talk about you in a very dehumanizing way, and there's minimal mental health stuff. And the other thing too was they had messed up my paperwork. Okay, so when I had gotten an initial paperwork, uh, they had said I was being charged with homicide, not attempted homicide. And I'm like, wait, you mean they're dead? Like in my head, for about 8 hours, I'm thinking like my life's over. I've killed someone,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm just like, dude, it was devastating because this person I was quite close with them, and even though there had been issues there, and I'm thinking like, dude, what is this? And the other thing I want to say too is the police acted completely unethically, because they come in and I don't remember everything because that again that whole thing's very touch and go, but I do remember being in the hospital and they gave me some kind of pills, right?
Yeah.
And then later, the law enforcement comes in to question me. So basically, I spent about 2 weeks there, and then I got ended up going to the hospital and getting hospitalized, and they got all my saw the doctors in there, and then that's when I received my actual diagnosis. And
And what
but
was your diagnosis?
schizophrenia,
What
yeah,
was the schizophrenia? And
yeah.
yeah, so carry on. Carry on.
Well, anyway, so then I was in there for about 2 weeks, and it was actually pretty productive. Did pretty good, getting trying to get better, and then I spent the next couple months living with my aunt because of
Yeah.
the situation. I had an ankle monitor on, and then
Okay.
and then my it was almost, thank God, praise be to God. I ended up things resolved themselves in about the best way they could be resolved, and all my stuff got significantly downgraded. And
Okay.
so I besides the time I had already spent in confinement, there wasn't really additional. I did have to do about like 5 months of house arrest, and
Okay.
then now I'm finishing up my first sentence, which was 24 months of probation, which included the house arrest, and then now I have another 2 years to go, and then I'll be completely free. So,
Okay. So do you believe then that shooting you were psychotic when that happened?
oh, 100%, yeah. I remember thinking like thing entities were trying to get inside my head and destroy me, and the
Yeah.
people were controlling these entities.
Yeah. I mean, I myself have had some run-ins with the police. I'm not going to go into it now, but I was also deeply psychotic at the time, and and sometimes it's like base instincts kicking, like a survival instinct kicks in, and you just try to do. You don't think about the law, I guess. You just
Yeah,
do what you.
that's totally irrelevant in that moment. You're like, it's just like you're just trying to survive.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me, let me ask you some questions then.
Uh huh.
Um, so how do you see the future now? You've had a patchy past, really. So are you optimistic? I mean, what do you see? I mean, you're only in your 20s, so you're still pretty young. You've got your whole life ahead of you. Where do you? What are your hopes for the future?
Honestly, I mean, I'm pretty optimistic right now. God willing, I I'm in the process of a couple things. One of the things I've done is I've actually learned a fair bit of Spanish, and I do have a girlfriend, and I also I've been trying to teach myself IT. I'm currently like disabled, but it's my goal and my dream to eventually be able to work in the IT sphere. And
Yeah,
I'm also in the process of joining the Roman Catholic Church, and
okay,
really trying to just I realized for me the biggest thing that I don't I want to be careful how I say this, but everything happening like it did, and then me finding out what the issue really was, has actually enabled me to really get my life
yeah,
on a more even keel, on a more level area. So I'm not like I would say before I was kind of like a pinball. You know what I mean? Like it was like here, 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 here. Like just all over the place. And now, I mean, I would a couple things I want to be able to work, but I would also like to volunteer and to be able to help people and to try to try to do something positive.
yeah. I mean, I think when you have this illness, it kind of forces you to live a certain lifestyle. A lot of people do spend a lot of time at home in recovery, but then, like you said, you can go volunteering, you can do education, you can go to community drop-ins, and you can even work towards an occupation if that's what you want to do. So, I mean, now it is kind of a different lifestyle, but you do get some nice opportunities, and when you're schizophrenic, you don't want anything too stressful. You want to live at your own pace, and so yeah, so I definitely think helping people is a good thing to do, because it's very rewarding, and in the sense that you do get rewards, in the sense that it helps you and grows you as a person.
Absolutely, yeah.
um, Okay, Samuel. I think we've almost got a half an hour, so I'm going to wrap it up here. Absolute pleasure to hear your story. I think you've had some scary experiences, but you've got through it, and you've got an understanding of what was the cause, what was the cause of what happened. So you've got something to work on now. So it's a real pleasure to speak with you. Yeah.
All right, well, hey, thank you very much. It was a pleasure being here, and I wish you the best.
All right. Cheers, man.